In today's maintenance video, we're going to look at how to fit a fork to your bike. Why would you need to take the forks out and replace them? Well, maybe you're upgrading your suspension fork, but also if you're working on your headset, you need to remove the fork. So first thing to do is just take out your front wheel. I've got a bolt through axle here, so dead simple. Next, I'm going to remove the front brake caliper from the fork. It's usually a 5mm Allen key, dead easy, just wind them out. Be careful not to lose your mount or any washers if there's any on there. Going to remove the hose guide from the fork just to take that front brake off completely. So I've taken everything off the fork. It's time to go up to the top and undo your top cap of the headset. Undo your stem pinch bolts, just holding onto the fork so it doesn't start to drop out of the frame itself, and just carefully let your bars hang on the brake hoses and things for now. And carefully remove all your headset spacers and the top part of the headset. So as I gently drop the fork out of the bike, you can see my lower bearing race has actually come with the fork. That will depend on the sort of frame and headset you have. Your headset bearing might actually just stay pressed into the frame. So there's the fork removed from the bike. So if you're fitting a new fork to your bike, maybe you're upgrading your suspension fork, there's a few things you really need to check for to make sure you're buying the correct fork for your bike. First thing is actually the steerer tube. They come in different sizes. This is what you call a tapered steerer tube. So it goes from a 1.5 inch diameter at the bottom up to 1 1/8 at the top. That's really common on bikes now. Other sizes are 1 1/8 straight all the way through, or 1.5 all the way through. But make sure that is correct for your bike. If you're buying a second-hand fork as well, it's really important to check that the steerer tube is long enough, because often people chop them down. If you're buying a new fork, it should be plenty long enough. You then fit it to the bike and then cut it down. But definitely check the steerer size and length. So with my old fork removed, now you need to take this crown race, which is part of your headset, off of the old fork and fit it to the new fork. They're a really tight press fit, and there is actually a special tool to take that off. It's this clamping tool. If I'm honest, at home, I do it the bodging way, and I actually use a screwdriver and a mallet, but you have to be really, really careful with that and just wedge it in and just try and tap that crown race off. You can damage the top of your fork, so you need to be super careful if you do it that way. I've got the new fork to fit to my bike, and it does look an awful lot like the old fork, I'll give you that. I've made sure I've got the right steerer tube to fit my bike, and the first thing to do is to fit this crown race that's part of your headset. Again, it's the reverse of the removal. This is a really tight fit onto your steerer tube, and you can get a special tool that slides over and you just press it down. Again, there is a slight way of bodging this, and in fact, this is the way I'll do it at home. It's just using a rubber mallet, go around gently and just tap it until it's nice and flush onto the top of your fork crown. So now it's time to fit the fork to the frame. I'm going to make sure my headset parts are lightly greased and they're easily reachable so that I can grab them and stick them onto the bike without any risk of the fork falling out. So see that lower bearing, it'll sit nicely on that crown that I've just pressed onto my fork. So sit it there and thread that fork up through the frame. Make sure the cables are on the right side so they sit nicely as they were before with your old fork. Now I'm reaching back and sticking the top parts of my headset into the frame. Then my spacers go on. So now just to slide your stem over the steerer tube. If you've just taken your fork off to work on your headset and you're replacing your old fork, then great, you're almost done. Just wind in your old top cap. However, if you are fitting a new fork, what I would say is just temporarily fit everything, tighten your stem up loosely for a second. And it's a good idea now to actually fit your front wheel and take the bike out of the stand. And what we're trying to do there is try and work on the bar height and try and find that correct bar height so that you can then cut down the steerer tube. So if I have fitted a new fork to my bike, temporarily fit the stem, take the bike off the stand, and now I'm just going to have a play around and get a feel for that bar height. Therefore, I can then look at how much I actually need to take off that steerer tube if I want to chop any off. So I'm going to play around using some spacers, get my bar height where I think comfortable, and then I'll mark the steerer and leave just enough space to have a spare spacer on top of my steerer. It's definitely worth checking out the GCN video, our sister channel, to see how to cut your steerer tube. So check that out. The link will be in the description down below. You need to make sure you've got enough spacers on your steerer tube so that when you tighten down that top cap, it doesn't bottom out on the steerer tube. So you've got a little bit of overlap, and I'll tighten that down. Once that's got a little bit of torque on it, what I'll actually do is just replace my front wheel and put the brake back onto the fork. I'll actually try and get that headset to the right tightness and straighten up my stem with the bike on the floor out of the stand. So with everything loosely in one piece, I'm now going to tighten down my headset to the right torque. So putting a little bit of pressure on there so that when I pull the front brake on and rock the bike back and forth, there's no movement in my headset. The way I like to do it is just to tighten it down a little bit so that when I pick the front wheel up, I can feel a tiny little bit of friction in the bearing. So I know there's a bit of pressure on there, but not too much. Once I've done that, now it's time to just straighten up my stem. So I like to look down the back of the handlebars and line them up with the top of the crown of the fork. Once that's nice and straight, you can then tighten down these clamping bolts on the side of your stem. So I've got two opposing bolts that pinch down on the steering tube to stop my stem from moving apart. I'll tighten the one a little bit, don't go too crazy, go back to the other side, tighten that down, and then go back because that will have loosened the other one off slightly. And about 5 Newton meters is about the right torque for those. Once that's done, headset's tight, and I'm ready to roll. It's worth mentioning that if you've changed the fork length by maybe putting longer travel suspension fork on there, you might need to play around with your brake hoses. So why not check out a video up there for how to shorten your disc brake hoses, or click down low for suspension forks explained. Click in the middle to subscribe to JMBN, it's free, and give us a thumbs up like if you enjoyed this video.